it's hard to separate the public feedback versus what I internally think. They get kind of muddled, I think, because it's like, should I put Kev on Tracer? It's like, well, probably not, you know. Like, we couldn't have prepared because the maps that we played in that series were maps that we'd never practice. Because TM came into that series and banned all of their own maps, right? They banned Lijiang, they banned Blizzard World, they banned the maps that they'd been practicing for a month to beat other teams on against us, first ban. And so, you know, I'm someone who's a bit arrogant. I didn't want to let, like, Hollywood slide, for example. Ilios was in that draft as well at the very end. You know, we were happy to play those maps because I know that we need to be a team that can do that. But we weren't. You know, at the end of the day, we weren't a team that could do that, I think. And the Hollywood, it felt like that was impossible. The fact that they would play Ram Moira on Hollywood, I mean, that's an insane thing to do. Like, that's something I would never expect in a million years. You know, in the matrix of possible things that could happen, that's not one of the ones I'm considering ever.
I'm here with Gunba, head coach of ENCE, who just finished second place in the European region. There has been some public criticism in terms of maybe even your person. So I thought, like, why not reach out? You had a bit of time since the match concluded to think about what happened. But I think it's fair to start out setting up how the preparation for this match went, because I think this is a very different scenario than Overwatch League was. So I imagine you would have to get creative in order to create as good practice environments as you could. So how did preparation go this time around?
Are you talking about the tournament itself or the match specifically?
I would say both.
Okay. In terms of the tournament, you know, our preparation was just play what we're good at and try and, like, develop that over time. Play, you know, Toronto, play teams overseas as well, and try and, like, get as much practice as possible. Kind of triple block towards the end, ramp up as much as possible. We ended up playing Crimzo because, you know, Moira was really relevant. He's, like, better at coming on Moira, so we put him in over Ghost. So that's how that happened. Yeah, and then the meta got changed 3 times due to the patches, you know, right before the tournament. So I think what most teams ended up doing is just having, like, a really weak map pool as a result. You know, you don't really have a lot of time to learn, like, all these different maps and, yeah, figure out how to, like, play every single angle and every single map. And most of them don't even get picked anyway. You know, I think most European teams pick the same, like, 2 maps over and over again. So practice is pretty directionless, I would say, and I think that was true for most teams. It was just trying to find the comp, like the latest good comp, and then you had, like, 1 day to practice it, and then there was a patch, and then you find the next comp and you practice it for 1 day, and there's another patch. So because of that, it felt really unrewarding to experiment in the sense that, you know, you don't have time to miss, if that makes sense. Every patch, I mean, you don't know there's going to be another patch, so you kind of assume that, you know, that's the patch, right? Like, oh man, we have, like, 3 days. Oh, actually, you have 1 day, you know. Actually, there's another patch. Yeah, I think that's the reality of the new esport. I don't think Blizzard will patch around Overwatch. Not that they did before, but we had, you know, tournament realms and stuff like that, which I think were detrimental to viewership. You know, I don't think that it's a bad thing, but it's a reality that we have to learn how to deal with, and I don't really have the answer to that yet. It's definitely an adaptation period. We're in the early days. Let me put you on the main screen. There we go. I think in terms of preparing for the tournament, in terms of our opponents, I mean, we didn't think about our opponents so much as we thought about the people that we'd have to beat at the end of the tournament. We thought a lot about how to beat London. Never going to learn to call them their actual org name, SSG. Yeah. We knew they would play dive in the end. We knew that was, like, the only direction they had, where they had the leverage over other teams. And in our mind, we thought that Twisted would stick to, like, the Morga comp, right? Which turned out to be true for most of the tournament. And that's really where we focused our preparation. In a pretty similar way to how Mayhem went towards the end, I said to the players, I'm like, look, you know, we're not going to beat Twisted on this Morga sim comp. I mean, we might, but, you know, in reality, I think they'll have the advantage. It's like a sim meta. It's really good for them, you know. It's something they're uniquely experienced at. And so we sort of pivoted to the Arista, like, Echo stuff. Before even practicing it, we just sent it in some scrims against some other random teams right before the tournament. And then that kind of led into, like, the Arista stuff against London. So it was a good fit. We felt like you know, that was the whole plan, is to counter kind of both teams with one approach. I think TM were fortunate enough to play London, because they probably would have lost, I think, in all honesty, because they were more narrowly focused on us. So it's unfortunate that happened. Maybe, like, EXO could have got them in the lower bracket, I think, at some point. But that's basically how we prepared for the tournament as a whole. We, like, focused on the 2 teams in our region, which is a huge problem because you play those teams every day. So it's like, I think there is no room for experimentation. You end up in a lot of mirror matches, and, like, there's nothing, no way to really hide anything you're doing. And so because of that, over time, we really learned how to play against TM and, like, how to play against London. And I think that really applied in the match, and you saw that, in initial matches against those two teams, it was really good. Like we crushed them. Like we knew exactly how to play. We knew exactly what they were going to do. We knew what the draft was before it even happened. Going into both of those matches, I had like a YouTube video that was like half an hour long, and explained how to play every single map that would be in those matches, and the draft went, literally 24 hours in advance. We knew exactly what we're playing, right? Which is a huge advantage. It's like Overwatch League level prep. You can just they're gonna do this. They're gonna roll it here. They're gonna use this TP. They're gonna play this swap. Whatever, right? So that's how like the London and TM initial matches went. Actually, we got the Echo comp from Korea. I was talking to Fate, and he told me like, no one's playing Morga, everyone's playing this. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. We have Kev on Echo. Why not, right? And so I think even TM have talked about this, is the fact that like we knew everything they were doing on these maps. Like we knew every single decision they would make, how they would use every ult. They're a very set team in that way. And so like I think they quickly realized that that's how we're winning. We just knew everything about them, and we knew how they're going to play every situation. And so their approach coming into like the final day, I think, to talk more about how they prepared than us. I think you said like, how did we prepare? It's like we couldn't have prepared, because the maps that we played in that series were maps that we'd never practice. Because TM came into that series and banned all of their own maps, right? They banned Lijiang, they banned Blizzardwall, they banned the maps that they'd been practicing for a month to beat other teams on against us, first ban. And so, I'm someone who's a bit arrogant. I didn't want to let like Hollywood slide, for example. Ilios was in that draft as well at the very end. We were happy to play those maps because I know that we need to be a team that can do that. But we weren't. At the end of the day, we weren't a team that could do that, I think. And that really showed, I think. And I think a big problem with why it was so hard to adapt during the match as well is like, I definitely think I could have seen some things better at that time, but I think a big part of the problem was that, so obviously like we find out that we're playing all these random maps, like literally 5 minutes before we go into the game. And it's like, okay, let's do it live. Let's figure it out. And then between every map, they gave us like a minute, and the admin is talking while I'm talking to the players about strategy. Like, I'm like, on Hollywood, like, what are we going to do? Let's do this, and then like constantly just, hey, can you guys get in lobby? Can you guys get in lobby? It's like, what's the rush here? We're told we have 5 minutes. We got like 1 minute. So that made it really hard to adapt. And I think TM came in with like a really straight up style. I think they played like the Moira Ram, which is a Mayhem classic as well. It's a great one for winning matches. It's so effective. It's so simple. It's impossible to choke. You don't need like a lot of strategy. And then they combine that with, I think, their experience as a team. In the sense that they've been together for like 2 years and like basically never lost, right? And so they were able to play like Nepal and Hollywood and maps like that at a higher level than us, I think, to be honest. Because we just have no experience as a team, right? We have no idea how to play Hollywood. Like, not to get into like the nitty gritty of the strategy stuff, but we're playing Hollywood defense behind the dumpster on a Morga comp. It's nonsense. Like, it doesn't make any sense. We had no idea what we're doing, and we had like no time to fix it. So that's unfortunate. But yeah, I'm still happy with the overall result. I think it feels bad to lose in the finals, and I think a big part of that that whiplash effect is that we beat them before, and that seemed like the start of like us being the number one team. In a lot of people's eyes. Actually, I thought we'd lose to them, to TM the first time we played them, because they are like overall a better team. They're more experienced. But the meta is good for them too, right? It's like it's a good situation for them. I think the map pool's good for them as well. So losing to them was like the most likely thing in my mind, actually. And then we won. And I was like, oh shit, we won by a pretty narrow margin, to be fair, in that 3-1. A lot of those maps could have gone either way, but yeah, I'm not surprised at the way we lost, but I think the whiplash is a big part of like the problem. I think the reason for that is simple. It's like the expectations were suddenly so high, but public expectations don't really matter, right? Like when I'm making those like decisions about what comp to play and how to adapt, and not to say I make good decisions in Smash, not at all, right? But I don't really consider the public opinion at all. Not because I like actively try and stop myself from doing that. I just don't think about it.
Yeah.
It's not in the moment you're thinking, how do I win this fucking match? Like what do we do here?
Sure.
So yeah, I think at the end of the day, like, I don't know, maybe some of those decisions weren't good, but I think to put it in perspective, we're a team for a month, we've got 2 retired support players. Kai and Kevster actually really did a really good job, and Vess has been like improving a lot, but we definitely started on the back foot, as a team, in terms of being behind on experience compared to the other European teams, which are built from cores. And I think we saw that across regions as well, right? Like we've seen that for the most part, the top teams in each region, you look at like Falcons, you look at Timeless in Toronto, you look at like London, EXO even, and TM, they're all teams that have been together for much longer than our core because we don't really have many SR peak check players at all. We have one player from that roster, not really a core at all. So for me, I'm like super happy. It was super weird to like go after that match and be like, yeah, this sucked. We could have won this match, but we got a match off them, and that's like a big step for like that mental barrier that we had against them. The way they got the match wasn't really sustainable. It's not something that would ever happen again kind of thing. They kind of cheesed it a bit. I mean, they're playing fucking Ram Moira on Hollywood. This is not the future of Overwatch, let's be honest.
Were you aware that
but then
was
it's like,
an option?
Sort of. I think we had an idea that they're going to play Ram Moira on like Nepal, for example. We thought that would be possible. And in our mind, the Morga Sim was the counter to Ram. I think that's the common consensus. I think that's another thing that caused backlash a little bit is that like nobody knows what counters what because the patches happen so frequently and the map pool is so random and all this stuff. It's like I think fans kind of look at the comps and think the thing that I saw work before or not work before, that's like a totally final solution to that problem. It's like now I fully understand the meta. Like I saw Morga lose to Ram once, therefore Ram beats Morga. It's like in actuality, any coach this meta who's been scrimming would tell you that Morga Sim should beat Ram comps, easily. Like that's the reason Ram wasn't in the meta. But it's not enough to lock the heroes. You have to also play the game, and we'd never really scrimmed against that comp before. And so a lot of the fundamentals are wrong. I don't think it's too much to give away. I think most teams will realize this, but like you don't really want your Morga out in the open getting shot by the whole team. You want to be behind the wall. You want a 3-2-1. You want to use like high ground angles because you have like more spam characters. So losing that matchup, I think, was more of a strategy performance problem than a comp problem, I think. And I'm responsible for that too. I could have, I think I was reactively telling the players that because I wasn't sure like what they would or wouldn't know. I thought some things might be obvious, some things might not be obvious. But going to Hollywood, because Nepal, I think that kind of made sense as an idea. The Hollywood, it felt like that was impossible. The fact that they would play Ram Moira on Hollywood, I mean, that's an insane thing to do. Like that's something I would never expect in a million years. In the matrix of possible things that could happen, that's not one of the ones I'm considering ever. I never will. I mean, that's crazy. There's a reason nobody plays comps like that in Hollywood. The map is 100 feet tall. But I think at that point there was a bit of nerves as well. Nepal went suddenly wrong. We're not a very experienced team, so I think we collapsed a bit mentally as well. And we're not the kind of team with strong leadership personalities that bring the team back from collapse, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty detrimental. And then we go into Hollywood. Hollywood was close, even. We got to overtime, for example, but there was a fight at the end of third point where we could have capped with 4 minutes left, and we had 5 ults, and we lost. And it's just oh, there's no coming back from this, Jesus. And then the Colosseum is not a good map, so it's just all downhill, Yeah. Sorry for the tangent, but it all kind of ties together, so.
No, for sure. Now, okay, let me ask more pointedly, because that was a major community talking point. I assume it's just how the Morga comp works. But a big point of criticism was that Kevster was playing a lot of Sim.
Right, yep.
In the community's eyes, not a carry hero. Not sure if that tracks, but yeah, why was that the decision that you went with?
Yeah, no, that's something I consider as well. Maybe on Hollywood especially, I think there was a case for that. But I think the way that you would get him onto Tracer in the meta, and again, this is context that fans will never have because there was 600 patches, is by playing the Ram Tracer comp, which we scrim TM on that comp a lot. They're just as good as we are, maybe even a little bit better, I think there's the illusion that if Kev's on Tracer, he's just going to kill the whole enemy team. They're good players, there's not this huge gap between UB and Kev. There is a gap, of course, but the gap isn't so monumental that this guy's not a professional player in a gold lobby. Putting him on Tracer is not going to win you the game. It's not that simple. Believe me, it's not. There are ways to beat Tracer, and I don't know if you were paying attention to the match, but how did they beat Ram Moira in the end? I don't know if you remember the final map there. They actually ended up going Morga Sim, right? Mm-hmm. That's how because obviously that's the count of the Ram, which they know, And so their goal is to avoid the Orisa comp, not so much not play Morga Sim, right? All a bit subjective and depends on the map, and it's all, maybe as people get better, the counter comps will change and stuff like that. Would we have done better with Kev on Tracer? Probably yes, because we didn't win. So if you have a decision that you know is bad, and then you compare it to a decision that you don't know if it would work or not, obviously that decision that you don't know looks more attractive, but I think we should have won Hollywood, just to be honest. We were ahead in that map by miles, and we fumbled a 5 ult to 0 ult fight because we didn't listen to our own alt calls in terms of what our plan was. We made a very clear plan, won't blame anyone, but we didn't execute it properly. Nepal was super winnable, I think, as well, and Colosseum was like, we're actually ahead at some point in that map, so, you know, I don't think the match was even that bad, to be honest. We won the 4th map, and then Shambali was super close as well, so, yeah, I don't know, I'm happy with the result. Surprised as Backlash at all. You know, we're a new team, right, with like a bunch of people who've never played together, all learning to play the game the same way and build like a comp structure and build like a shared understanding of comps that we need to play. And, you know, I think being like the first team to beat that roster in 2 years is like, for a 1-month-old team, I'm optimistic. I'm really optimistic, actually. Like, I feel really good about the fact that we're able to do that, you know, and like the level that we got to, especially, and like, you know, picking apart how they're playing some of these maps. We just need more experience to not get caught off guard by cheese and be able to have conversations mid-game about adapting. I know like people might think that's easy, but it's really not. You know, teams are terrible at talking. Like, this might surprise you, but professional players are not good communicators in game, especially when they're stressed and they're thinking about like the game itself and there's no downtime, and it's like juggling while talking. You know, it's nonsense, right? So that's a skill we need to develop for sure. Yeah.
You seem pretty happy with your results generally. Do you think you will have to, in good old Mayhem fashion, I suppose, solve some of the issues with roster changes, or are you happy with the guys you have right now?
Oh yeah, we'll definitely be looking to add to the roster, I think. Straight up. You know, I think we're not going to remove anyone from the roster, to be clear. That's not happening, nothing like that. Both because I don't want to, but also there's a detriment to do that. In terms of the circuit points, the system itself is designed to prevent this, even though you can technically change roster. It's like, that's not really a thing that you want to do. Yeah, but absolutely we have some weaknesses, and I mean, one of the big ones is being able to play dive, you know. The fact that we can't play dive with Kevster and Kai on our roster because Vest doesn't have that hero pool, like that side of the hero pool, is a huge problem. So that's the main thing I'd like to solve. However possible, with whoever possible. That's something we need to fix, I think, especially because I think one thing that's true is like we're on like TM's level in terms of rush comps. But I think if we had like a good dive tank, we'd also beat London on dive comps and be able to play dive against TM, right? So like, and TM lose to dive nonstop. They're hopeless against dive, you know. So like, that would give us like the rock paper scissors, I think, to win against both teams. But right now it's like we're just like a London counter, you know. It's like it doesn't really work in our favor necessarily this time. You know, maybe if the tournament was like organized differently or whatever, the seeding was different. But yeah, so I think just like not being able to play dive maps is a huge problem. I think next stage with the new map pool, that's even more of a concern. And yeah, even for TM, that's going to be a huge issue for them as well. You know, there's a lot more like big maps in the pool that don't reward hit scans but do reward dive tanks, and you know, in that respect, they're very dependent on like courts and like building around like ground tanks. So optimistic we'll find a way to beat them, I think, and happy that we took like positive first steps to do that, even if the final wasn't how we wanted it to go.
For sure. In Korea, the game between WAC and Falcons, who many consider to be, you know, one of the best, if not the best, 2 teams on the planet right now, they kind of handshook on Winston. Do you think that's the future of this meta on this patch, or do you think they just handshook?
I think it's like a regional handshake in the sense that, you know, the players have a shared understanding of the game and they're likely to agree on similar things, right? I think you could play Winston in Europe and win. I think London could have done that. EXO could have beat TM. I think if you look at that EXO versus TM series, for example, they could have won Lijiang. They should have won Lijiang, I think, right? So yeah, like that should have been like a maybe map 5 series there, and maybe that goes a different way, you know. So I wouldn't call it a handshake in the sense that it's wrong, because I don't think anybody knows what's right, and it's impossible to know what's right with the quality of practice and the time we have between the patch and the tournament. It's like, it's definitely a handshake in some sense, you know, in the sense that like there's 100 possibilities and 2 teams in the same region have agreed on one of those possibilities. But you know, I don't know. I'm not sure how to read into like the meta at the moment. Feels like fucking nonsense, to be honest. Feels like people are playing all the characters that are kind of easy to play together, like the Kiri, Soja, and Lucio stuff with a Tracer and then any tank. You know, it's like it's a bit ridiculous. It's yeah. It reminds me of I don't know if you remember 2022 playoff meta where Kiri first got it, and everyone's just playing these like all-in Kiri comps that have absolutely no team play requirements whatsoever. It seems natural that styles like that would be more rewarded early in the meta, and it seems like we're perpetually early in the meta. So I think we're going to see a lot of garbage like this, to be honest.
Now, I'm sympathetic to what's having trouble playing Winston comps with European player pools, or really North America, Western player pools. Still, I'm looking at your roster. You already have 2 tanks. Does that mean effectively Cloudy becomes your Rein bot? Considering like even in the rush metas that you're currently playing, the like that.
Something we're looking at is, and just to be clear, you know, Cloudy's a person that has to choose between like streaming and pro play in a sense. Like his viewers want to play Rein, you know, at the end of the day. But he's a big part of our team in terms of like dealing with the org and like being. I talk to him like every day about what's going on and how we should adapt and even planning for matches and stuff like that. Obviously, there's like a competitive ban as well, which is the issue.
Right.
But I want to work with Cloudy no matter what. I think as a player or not, yeah. And he is grinding Winston now as well in ranked, but yeah, that's a big ask. I think to go to international tournaments and have Cloudy on Winston. Yeah, that's like even he appreciates the ridiculousness of that idea. And yeah, Rein is historically shit. Like just holy shit, that hero sucks. It's like the worst tank in the game, I think. Like I'd rather see a Roadhog, honestly. So yeah, we're gonna look at an option in Europe for that position and see. You know, nothing guaranteed, but if necessary, Cloudy will pick up the tank role as well. Yeah.
When is Cloudy available again?
I think he's available after the open qualifier in this stage. So for like the groups.
Makes sense, yeah. And then I think you were pretty open about your own mistakes that you made. What are the lessons? How will you adjust to the learnings, especially of the final?
That's a good question. It's hard to separate the public feedback versus what I internally think. They get kind of muddled, I think, because it's like, should I put Kev on Tracer? It's like, well, probably not, you know. I mean, I'm not sure that was the great solution, you know, to how some of those maps went. I think, firstly, I should have been more open to the possibility of a team doing something that I didn't think was good. I think TM playing Ram Moira is like, it's in quotes objectively wrong on the maps they're playing. It's like a strategy that you would never win more than one game with, kind of thing. But yeah, it was one game that they needed to win, and they did win. So I think being more open-minded. I heard rumors at the start of that day they're playing Ram. I was like, surely this is for EXO, because they had to play like a Winston team. I was like, that makes sense. And then, oh shit, they're playing Ram on Nepal. Surely they won't play on Hollywood, you know. And you can imagine my thought process here. I'm getting slow cooked by this bullshit. You know, it's like, so I think on some level, I think being more open-minded about what other teams might think is good. Because I think one of the things in Overwatch League that we didn't have to deal with, and this is interesting, it's like there's 2 issues here. One is that you had a more strict sense of the maps you were playing, so you didn't get surprised 5 minutes before a match with some map that you didn't know you were going to play, right? And then you had time instead of the admin like pushing you all the time, so you had more time to adapt, I think, and like prepare in that sense. And then you also had leaks because you knew every other team, and there were so many teams. You usually had some kind of information about like how serious they were about a certain direction, and you could kind of give your players some feedback about like, hey, you know, this is what they're going to do. This is how we're going to play. Like, keep an eye out for this. Maybe they'll do this, you know. But going into that TM match, there was no feedback like that. I had nothing useful to say because I couldn't see any of the comps coming, which, you know, sounds dumb, but it's like, how do you explain infinite comps to the team before? In the 1 minute I have with the admin interrupting me, I have to be precise, you know. I think it would have been possible, you know, if they're playing. Yeah, I could have explained generalities, like if they're playing some kind of rush comp, maybe we should be on high grounds more. Make sure we don't take damage before the fight. You know, I could have explained these like basic concepts of the comp, but I do wonder long term if it's not just on the players to pick up that stuff, to be honest, or like at least remember back to their scrim experience and like be able to have a conversation naturally about their advantage in the comp rather than relying on like a pre-programmed coach that, you know, you might have used in Overwatch League, for example. Because yeah, as I said, I mean, there's an infinite number of possibilities and 1 minute to talk about them. It's like, you know. I could have found the needle in the haystack there. I think it was possible today, so I regret not doing that. But long term, I don't think that's the solution. I think that just having, you know, teaching the team to have more of those conversations, I think, is really important.
It feels like the way you guys sold Crimzo, he's also in this middle position between coach and player, right? Like, shouldn't he be the guy that basically uploads the strategies into the players?
Yeah, the fact that he has the capacity to do that does not make it easy to do in-game, as I said, right? You're juggling and talking. It's like not something he's had to do on teams before. So the fact that he's like really smart and he is, you know, doesn't do much in-game. Again, this is the thing that sounds confusing. It's like, why wouldn't someone who understands these things in-game be able to say them? It's like, probably if you take all 5 of our players outside the match and say, how should we play this comp? You know, what's our advantage? I'm sure they can figure it out. But in the moment when you're stressed, you're like nervous, you're in a grand final. Probably the biggest match we've ever played as a team. We've played like 3 real matches as a team together, ever, you know? The comms are a mess, you know, all the stuff's going wrong, and like, you know, we don't have like a leader necessarily that we're like designating, so easier said than done, I think. In terms of Crimzo's role, you know, moving him back to coach, obviously, as I said before, for a bunch of reasons. You know, I think Ghost is a player with like huge potential. I think we kind of have to realize that to get our team to where we want it to be in terms of the skill level of the team, especially for like the big event in the middle of the year, obviously. And his school schedule's cleared up, so it seems like a good time. And I think also having Crimzo as a coach is really helpful. Like having someone to talk to about the game is super useful. To sanity check things that I think he'll say, right? Maybe we put the team on Ram Moira on Coliseum if he's in the coaching slot, you know, who knows? But yeah, so I hope that explains Crimzo's role.
For sure. Do you think there's this experiment, or rather the rule change that they made in Korea, where they give more agency to teams in terms of the map types specifically? And it also seems to be a measure against, you know, the large increase in 3-0s we've seen across the competitive ecosystem. Are you a fan of that? Should that happen in Western regions as well?
It's such an open-ended idea. Like things that could happen based on this idea. I think it might be a protection for the fact that Blizzard just keeps adding game modes and the format just keeps getting wider. And at some point, you have like 7 game modes and you're playing a BO3. How does that work? You know. So I think in that sense, it might be more fair, and that like it lets you scale the you know, BOX, like the, you know, BO3, BO5, whatever. It lets you scale that without just deleting map pools, you know, without deleting game modes, because a lot of the game modes play in a similar way. It's like you lose, you know, I don't know what a good example of this is. Like escort maps are usually excluded in these BO3s, or like, you know, like hybrids or whatever, and like you're losing a fundamental playstyle that teams might benefit from or like want to, you know, play more often than others. So I think in that sense, it's probably a smart change, but it's also becoming a circus, and I don't know how to feel about that because it's like kind of unknown. You know, it's like, you know, we have like map bans, we're gonna have game mode picks, we're gonna have like basically, you know, open tournaments, we're gonna have like the seeding kind of being kind of random, especially based on the way the open tournaments works. So, like the matchups are pretty random. You don't play some teams, you play other teams. I saw some like dev post about hero bans. Like, I mean, where are we going here? You know, it's like at some point it'll be a circus. And it could be a good circus, it could be an entertaining circus, but it's hard to predict if that's good or bad. You know, it feels kind of random. Like, yeah, in practice, we'll see. I have a feeling that, you know, once teams solve it, a lot of the interest will be removed. You know, especially in Korea, they're a region that consistently seems to pick the exact same maps every day. Why wouldn't they pick the same game modes? You know.
Right.
So yeah, I'm not sure. I understand the reasoning behind this decision. It's not something I refuse to believe it's something they've like thought out in detail. If that makes sense, they're kind of YOLOing. I feel, which is happening more and more with Overwatch, and maybe that's fine. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's correct. Honestly,
are there other rule sets you'd like to see implemented? Maybe not just as a competitor, but think that would also improve the viewership experience.
Improve the viewership experience, huh?
Maybe by providing more parity, or I mean, the community seems to like diversity a lot in hero choices.
I always felt like loser map picks was like the best way to do that, and Overwatch League did that in playoffs, and the playoffs were usually pretty good. Some really epic matches in the playoffs, and the reason was just loser picks. That's the only reason. The way the ban structure works now is like it's kind of a Frankenstein thing with like sometimes you get 2 bans, sometimes you get 1 ban, sometimes a team picks one of the 2 flashpoints. I think the current system leads to the team with the bigger map pool winning more often, or the team with the larger amount of experience winning more often, and that's bad in a sense. Even though it's fair, it's bad because it obviously doesn't create parity. I think we've seen, I'd argue we've seen more 3-0s than we saw in Overwatch League, right? Is that fair to say? Like, it's been more one-sided
50%
and
up.
less.
Yeah.
There's been less diversity in comps, and I think there's been way more 3-0s,
Yes.
which indicates a failure, right? In a way, like in a format that should be very random and like, you know, crazy things are happening. Nothing crazy is happening. The better team usually wins, and when the better team doesn't instantly win, it's a compensation. Like, because it happens so fucking, you know, infrequently. It's like, So I think, like, I don't know, the map ban system should be revisited, I think, to create, maybe loser picks is like a solved problem. Maybe you don't need more than that. Maybe, like, you know, maybe that's it. And I think hero bans would be a huge one. I really want asynchronous hero bans. I might be alone on that. I want hero bans structured so that both teams can't pick the same heroes. I want mirror matches to be literally impossible. That would be interesting to me, I think, right? But that's not the case. And what scares me about any other proposal is that any other proposal in that realm creates mirror matches, because, well, what do you do when you're in like a new meta, you know, because of the hero bans or whatever, for that match? And the enemy comp looks good. Well, you steal that shit immediately, because, you know, you haven't got like 5 minutes to have a conversation about who had the better idea. Like, you reload into the server, you see their idea, you're like, that's better than our idea, let's take it, you know. It's not like they're practiced, right? Like, implicitly, if you have hero bans that are dynamic between the matches, no one's practiced anything. So I'd like to see asynchronous hero bans. I'd like to see teams literally forced not to mirror each other.
Would a lot of bans not just default to the overpowered characters so we can all enjoy some more balanced Overwatch? Because that's usually how it works in League, right?
Yeah, the problem with Overwatch is I think there's like more of a deep knowledge of each player's hero pool and strengths, and like I think when you play people every day in your region, which you will, and there's like way less talent coming into the region, everyone knows what Kevster can play, you know, at the end of the day. So like, I think because of that, you'll see it more targeted to specific players or to protect your own players. Like, we could ban Winston if it stole us, right? That's something we could do. But then you go up against TM, it's like, well, they can't play Winston either. Okay, let's ban Sim, right? Let's get them off. It's like, I think largely it would just be used to take away the heroes that the other team is better than you at. That's literally all it would be. Which I'm not sure if that's a good thing either. Again, there's so many trade-offs with all this stuff. Yeah, and I also think I just remembered something I should talk about there. It's like, I remember I was thinking about the Sim stuff for Kev, and it's like, I think something Kev got criticism for last year that I didn't want repeated is that he was kind of not performing on like certain heroes, like Reaper or Mei, right? He's seen as like a traditional flex DPS. And to me that feels like a huge fucking waste, because he is really good at everything he plays. And it's like, I never want to see players like believe they can't do something when they can. I think that sucks. So like, I've been pushing him a lot to get better at that stuff. Like, you know, we played Mei at the start of the meta, we're playing Sim now as well. So never gonna be sad about that, you know. Obviously, if it comes down to like EWC or a tournament that actually matters, I mean, this tournament's fucking $30,000, and like fuck all circle points, you know, it's whatever. Like, but if it comes down to a tournament that we need to win, you know, maybe we'll make some more like, you know, not sure what the word is, but like focused decisions on just trying to win in the moment, I think. But yeah, we need to be developing our hero pool and having confidence in like being able to play heroes like Sim in matches, which we don't have. So, there's only one way to get there, unfortunately. But yeah, I don't think hero bans would ever be used in a way. Yeah, again, I think all these decisions sound good in theory. I think a lot of the decisions that OWCS made this time around, we already believed. If you think about it, we had this conversation before, and we believed that these changes would make the game more diverse and make the matches closer and give people in OWCS more of a chance to get onto teams and create more like upwards mobility for people who are struggling. And the opposite's been true in every case, right? There's less upward mobility. Teams are much more calcified. There's less diversity, and matches are more one-sided. So, you know, I guess I would hope that they keep iterating, because so far, not good. You know, like so far, objectively, I think. Not even me being like a doomer or something. It's like, objectively, I think Overwatch is a worse place for everybody involved, right? And I'm not talking financially. I'm talking in terms of like even just the opportunity to play in the top end of the tournaments for nobodies. You know, like I think things have become like more player run and less like org run. And I think that doesn't benefit people who didn't have a chance before. It benefits people who already had a chance. Yeah, like me. You know, yeah. So I don't know. I'm not sure about hero bans. I don't know.
I feel like one thing that especially like European and North American scenes sort of did not acknowledge to that point is, I think the stratification of teams is like, okay, we're now all running around Overwatch League talent. That's generally ahead. Like, Overwatch League talent is doing pretty well in this system. Whoever does not have Overwatch League talent or less Overwatch League talent cannot really even fill up with imports of Koreans to the degree to create parity, right? So necessarily, if you have 16 teams, but you only have like 25 Overwatch League pros tops in those regions, well, not that not necessarily just create a stratification for a foreseeable future of like the top 5 teams being remotely possible to take teams of games of each other, with the rare exception, I guess, in Timeless case, you have to say, where there was some underappreciated talent, I guess, in the region. But otherwise, like, is that not the way forward, at least in the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I mean, Timeless is the exception I was also thinking of. But there's also asterisks there. I think they have, like, from what I've heard, they have a good coaching staff. It's like Tensor and Cap. They have some of the best rookie talent in NA, and they've been together for a long time. They're like a mayhem team that's already been realized in that sense, you know. So yeah, no, they're definitely an exception, I think, and they're very impressive. And yeah, I mean, they still got 4-0, but they beat M80. I mean, fuck. But yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think that it's only going to get worse as well because of the circuit points, right? Like, teams have rules about their points that qualify them for the events, and those points have rules associated even deeper into those rules, you know, like about how like core rosters are defined, about how points are transferred between teams, how they're calculated, how many maps you have to give each player to have them even get circuit points for the event.
You were cognizant of that with Crimzo and Ghost, right? You were playing around with that?
To be honest, that's not something I thought about, honestly. I just thought about how do we, like, who's the player we should play to win, and like I realize now that's a mistake in hindsight, so that was stupid of me, but that's an annoying thing to think about. I don't want to think about that, because it's not like we're like changing the roster a bunch of times. It's not like we're removing players and adding players, you know. It's like, these are people who are always on our roster, you know. It's like, but we're like being punished for playing them, because like I want to develop Ghost, but I want to play Crimzo or Moira on this tournament. Like, it's punishing, and it also is more punishing because those points never reset, which I didn't know until today. I think on Commander X's stream there was a deep dive into the rules for whatever reason. Yeah, just a random spur of the moment thing, but it seems like the points that you get now qualify you for Stockholm as well as Dallas. It's like the whole year. It keeps compounding. It's like, so let's say you're like 6 months in. It's like, and you're like a Ghost type player. That player is not getting added to a team, even if that team needs. They're going to run the season down with the piece of crap on their team that they don't want, instead of getting like the new guy who deserves a shot, you know. And maybe that's fair for like your yearly format, you know. I don't know, but
did he hit the threshold? I think he played a couple of matches in Swiss.
I think you have to play the group stage.
Oh, right.
I could be wrong about that. I don't think the Swiss stage counts at all. So like the rules are very specific, and we saw Timeless do this. They're like swapping the DPS for no reason. We saw EXO do this as well. I don't know why they had all these roster swaps. Maybe they did think about the circuit points. But yeah, it feels. Again, I feel like there's so many systems in OWCS, when you look at them at first glance, they're like, ooh, that's interesting. That makes sense. I'm glad they're trying this. And then you like mentally map out how that's going to go, and you think, oh, wow, this is shit. Like, there's a bunch of reasons not to do this, you know? It's not tied to EWC or whatever, so in the end, it's not make or break, you know? I don't think anyone's going to make decisions around OWCS if they're a serious contender for the big money, let's say. But yeah, certainly I hope they keep changing things, because where they're at now, I think, is going to, yeah, go downhill eventually.
It also, to some degree, actually facilitates the construction of like super teams towards the end of the year, just because you're not getting as heavily punished, right? Like if you pick up the best players from the best
on the system,
teams,
you are incentivized to take players from your competitors.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. You're incentivized to take people with points to your team. I think there's some rules about they have to play, so it's not like you can boost your points.
Right.
But that's not really how the qualification works. It's a relative system, so it's like, if it doesn't matter if you don't go up, if other teams go down, right? So that's a huge issue, I think. And that's going to be an issue for sure, you know? Like, that, of course that's going to be abused. If you can convince someone to join your team and they'll disqualify their own team and qualify your team, it's like, there's an incentive to do that, you know, for sure. Especially for teams like breaking up or like not having the results they want. It might even be like a problem with the rats. You know, the first person to jump ship is the guy who, right, they'll have the same points. Like, maybe the first guy joins and then fucks over all his friends. You know, it's gonna happen, you know, I think. So yeah, definitely a concern.
For sure. Then we wish you the best of luck in preparation for stage 2, and thank you for the interview.
Thank you.